I may be a little biased, but I think I have one of the nicest home libraries on the East Coast of the United States of America. Hello, welcome to my channel, Another Bibliophile Reads. My name is Greg, and today I want to give you a complete tour of my home library. I will try to show you a glimpse of every bookshelf that I have. This, by necessity, will be rather quick. I will stop and dwell on one or two titles, but if I tried to show you every book of interest, I would be here for a very, very long time. Maybe if this video captures enough interest in the viewers, I will give a more in-depth view of each individual shelf. I did try to do that with my mass market paperbacks earlier in 2025, and maybe I will pick that up again. But anyway, on to the tour. I separate out my books according to format size. I have mass market paperbacks, and then I segue into quality paperbacks. And over here, I have my hardcover books. I do this mostly because I worked at Crown Bookstore in the late 80s and up into the early 90s, and that's sort of how the bookstore separate out their books. So I will start with my hardcover collection, and I go alphabetical by author. In hardcover, I don't separate out nonfiction from fiction. So of course you'll see some Aristotle next to some novels. Got some Margaret Atwood. I got some Clive Barker. I have perhaps one of the most extensive collection of Thomas Bernhard translated into English. Thomas Bernhard was a very curmudgeonly Austrian author. He was a boy during World War II, and he was absolutely appalled with what the Austrians did in World War II. So I really like him. He has a very unusual style of writing. He basically has one long paragraph in writing. So if I open this up for you, you will see that there are no paragraph breaks. And that basically continues all the way through the book. There are some novels with some breaks, but you have to get used to that kind of style. Now, I really write him. He had a horrible view of humanity. As I said, a huge curmudgeon. But I really liked his books when I was in my 20s. I've been rereading him in my late 50s, and I'm less impressed now. Maybe I've chilled out from Thomas Bernhard. Let's go check out some Jorge Luis Borges. I have his 3 hardcover books of collected fictions, collected poems, and selected nonfiction, translated into English. And let's go down. Nothing great there. And over here, I have some Dostoevsky, translated from the Russian, of course. Now, you're going to notice some glare on here, and that's because I have plexiglass covering my bookshelves. And I do this because I once had a cat with a urinary tract infection, and the cat decided to pee against my bookshelf. And of course, the books that the cat peed on were ruined, and I didn't want that ever to happen again. So I just came up with this plexiglass solution. Now, I have removed the plexiglass from all the other shelves, but they are available, or the plexiglass is on all my other shelves. And there is Bella. She's never had a urinary tract infection. There is Pip. He's never had a urinary tract infection. And there's little Tibby. She's never had a urinary tract infection. In fact, that I've never had to protect my books with plexiglass because I've never experienced that urinary tract infection again. But if I ever do, my books are protected. I have some Gunter Grass. And let me show you this. It is a signed Gunter Grass. Not many people in the United States of America probably have signed Gunter Grass editions. And just going through all my shelves. I have the complete Colleen McCullough First Man in Rome series. I have only read up to Caesar's Women. I really want to get back to that. Women and Men. Look at this one. This is one of the famous postmodern novels. I can't really open it one hand. It's a little over 1,000 pages long. It is out of print, I believe, or was out of print a few years ago, and it was very expensive. I happened to get that copy for $4.99 at Crown Books on a remainder sale. I have a lot of Vladimir Nabokov. Vert by Jeff Noon. This is a science fiction novel that I picked up when I was working at Borders Books. I transferred from Crown Books. And this edition comes with something special. I got to put this on the floor. It comes with a yellow feather, which is part of the plot, and it is signed by the author. I got some Thomas Pynchon down there. I am going to be rereading Gravity's Rainbow in 2026, but I'll be reading that on my Kindle. I have some Dan Simmons books. I used to have a lot more, but I, for some reason, unhauled them. And again, if you want to look at my Dan Simmons, they are signed. And that is an authentic Dan Simmons signature. I used to really like Neil Stephenson as an author. Cryptonomicon was one of my favorites. I was a computer programmer of sorts when I was working, and Cryptonomicon does heavily feature computer programming, so I really liked it. I also really liked Anatheme. Then we go down. And we come to the end of the hardcovers. I've got a little space to expand on my hardcovers. Not a whole lot, but I'm not buying a lot of hardcovers nowadays. Now, under the hardcovers, I have my William T. Vollmann collection. He really is my favorite living contemporary author. I have all of his fiction in hardcover signed, and most of his nonfiction in hardcover also signed. There are a few that are not signed that I was just not able to get to him when he's doing signings. There we go, and I can show you an authentic Volman signature right there. And he will also illustrate or do a tiny little drawing in some of his books if you go to one of his signings, or he used to. Now, down at the very bottom, I have the 7-volume Rising Up and Rising Down. That is his book on the justifications of the use of violence. I have only read the first volume, and one of these days I need to set aside a year to go through this book very slowly. It's over 3,000 pages long, so yeah, it's going to take some time. So let's look at my quality paperbacks. Here we have Cthulhu stories based on H.P. Lovecraft, translated from the Japanese. There are 4 volumes. I really need to read John Barth one day. His Saltweed Factor. I did read The Floating Opera. I got some Ian M. Banks. Most of my Ian M. Banks culture series are on Kindle. And here we have some Thomas Berger. Thomas Berger is most famously known for his novel Little Big Man, which was turned into a famous movie with Dustin Hoffman. But I think the novel Little Big Man is fantastic. I also have some Thomas Bernhard duplicates in paperback. I got some Space to Expand on quality paperback. I have Dangerous Visions and Last Dangerous Visions in quality paperback. I have a mass market of Dangerous Visions. And here you'll see the Flashman series. I love the Flashman series. They are historical fiction set in the 19th century about a very notorious man who was a coward and a liar and a womanizer and a thorough rapscallion. But his novels are historically accurate, even though his character is to be despised, but in a lovable kind of way. This one's kind of interesting. This is considered to be one of the most famous Australian novels. It is huge. It is over 1444 pages. And just look at that print size. I'm not sure how I would ever be able to read something with print that small, but it's something I would like to get to someday. Let's see if I can get this back on the shelf. I'll put it there for now. Robert E. Howard's Conan stories. Of course, have to have a little bit of Conan. Gotta have a cat in a video. Hey, Pip. Pip, you can come out? Oh, what's that cat doing? Guest star. I have some manga translated from the Japanese of H.P. Lovecraft. My Cormac McCarthy. Iris Murdoch. Iris Murdoch is a very interesting British author. She was a professor of philosophy, ethics, something like that. Michael Moorcock is, of course, one of the greatest science fiction fantasy authors of the 20th century, and this is his series of historical fiction. I've got some Vladimir Nabokov. I'm try to speed this up. I picked up a whole bunch of George Simeon books from my local library when they're having a sale. George Simeon is a police procedural, essentially, starts off in the early part of the 20th century, and they're a lot of fun, translated from the French. I probably said that already. And of course, I've got some Jim Thompson books, one of America's great noir authors. Now, I'm going to finish up with my regular paperbacks down here. They continue down. I do have some empty space. But up at top, I have my New York Review Classics books. I put them all together because they really look nice together. Those are sort of oversized books in the NYRB series. They're a bit larger than usual. I have the normal size paperbacks on these three shelves. I have my stuffed plush Raven, Nevermore. And I just love the NYRB Classics books. Essentially older books that are not necessarily the super classics, but they're great. And I want more of them. And I have some more space. Okay, in this thin shelf, I have my poetry. And I just shelve poetry altogether. I have my anthologies first, and then just quality paperbacks, hardcovers, and one or two mass markets in poetry. All right, on the top shelves here, I have anthologies. And I have two shelves of anthologies at top. Now I get into my mass market paperbacks. I start off with the Dre Prescott series, some Burroughs, my Jeffrey Lord, Richard Blade series with some really tacky, great covers. I have my Hard Case Crime mass market paperbacks. I used to subscribe to this publisher when they're publishing every month. They eventually went out of business and then started republishing, but you see, they started republishing in this larger format size, which I'm not particularly fond of. Now, on the bottom, I start with my mass market paperbacks. Again, I shelve hard fiction, nonfiction, and drama together. There's not a whole lot of drama, but you might find one or two drama if I can see them. Yeah, there's at least one nonfiction, Simone de Beauvoir. And not a whole lot to call out here. My wife loves having knickknacks on my shelves. Don't ask me why. She thinks I need them. But I have the space for the knickknacks right now. Go down. Over there. I gotta speed up this viewing. John Jakes is pretty amusing. You showing up again, Mr. Pitt? I am missing a shelf for this bookcase. I did go to IKEA, and unfortunately, this birch coloring IKEA no longer makes. So I'm not sure what's going to happen there. I might just stick in a white shelf. Who knows? And here I have my Ed McBain's 87th Precinct. I own a lot. Criminale really got me reading these again. I think I own enough, nowhere near the complete series, but I don't think I'll ever read the complete series of that. Michael McDowell's Blackwater books. These are great collectibles. You will not find them for these prices nowadays. I bought it for $125, and I think it's selling, last time I checked, like $20, $30 per paperback. Something outrageous in that category. Of course, I have some Jean-Paul Sartre. Mickey Spillane. Valley of the Dolls. That was an interesting read. I have some reference books up at the top of this shelf. Then I continue on with just the mass market paperbacks. I have some basically anthologies, Renaissance, Dorothy Parker, Nietzsche, Swift. Now I'm going into my collections, short stories. Of course, I got some Alfred Hitchcock Presents, the Great Science Fiction Hall of Fame, Avon paperbacks, the Dangerous Visions, and again, Dangerous Visions by Harlan Ellison. And now down here, I'm getting into some series. I have a lot of the Nick Carter series. Nick Carter is a secret American agent. He is also listed as the author. Yeah, we know that. I have some of the most violent Westerns ever written. Edge by George G. Gilmore. Gilmore was a British author who had never read a Western novel in his life, and then he watched some spaghetti Westerns with Clint Eastwood and started writing his own Westerns. They're interesting and violent. And over here, I get into my naughty Westerns. Those are Westerns that are essentially erotic chapters in between. I have more naughty Westerns than I will ever read, but they're very often just dirt cheap. And now I have to go to the other side of the room. On this side of the room, I have mostly nonfiction. I have a lot of these modern library books with the tan cover. A lot of these came from a library sale early in the year, and they were basically giving these away. I paid for one or two, but for like the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, after like 3 weeks of no one buying them, they just put it on a free shelf, so I grabbed them. Over that edge, I have some books that have not yet been shelved. I have my box set, the complete works of Primo Levi. He was an Italian Jewish author who wrote If a Man, well, what is a man? Something like that. A really good autobiography of his time in Auschwitz. I have Samuel Beckett, the complete works in English. The complete Greek tragedy, Tale of Genji. My Proust, I tried to read Proust this year and was not able to finish. I need to try again. Box set of Chinese classics. Somehow or another, I skipped over my Everyman collections. The first half of this is The Everyman Without the Dust Jacket. I have, of course, Chaucer, and this Chaucer is in his original Middle English. It's readable with a little bit of practice and tolerance, and just the general understanding is that some words just may not be comprehensible without notes. And of course, after that, I have the ones in the dust jackets. And now down here, we'll start with the nonfiction proper. I have another edition of Edward Gibbon's The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire in paperback. I actually was looking at the print last night. I think the print is a little bit better in the Penguin edition paperback than in the hardcover. This book won the National Book Award for nonfiction. I forget the year. It is basically edited letters from the South during the Civil War. This was written by Robert Manson Myers. He was my University of Maryland junior English professor. Tell us all how to write well. He was not a very good teacher. More Nabokov. And that is the end of the nonfiction. One more room to show you. I have a complete video showing my Library of America collection, so I'm not going to go through the individual volumes. I'm just going to show you essentially what it looks like. I have the Library of America separated out by individual volumes and then my box set. At the bottom over here, you will see me begin with my art books or picture books. Some of these are just graphic novels. Of course, I have The Complete Far Side by Gary Larson and the Marvel Monster books. These are so much fun. A little outdated. And let's see if I can find a humorous picture that I always like to show in these books. Because these giant monsters are wearing underwear. See, giant monster, wearing purple underwear. Who would have thought that a monster would wear purple underwear? And that's essentially what the shelf looks like in this, my basement guest room. Okay, that is the end of my library tour. I hope there are a few people who will agree with my bias, saying that I have one of the nicest home libraries on the East Coast of the United States of America. Thank you for watching, and keep on reading and collecting books.